In this video, I will teach you how to make an ombre string art feather using a variegated yarn skein. For this tutorial, I will be using one of my acrylic feather string art templates. You can purchase this or my download and print template over on my website or my Etsy, or if you want to make your own feather design, you can do that as well. I'm starting off securing the template to the board. I'm just using some blue painter's tape, but you can use whatever kind of tape you might have on hand. Also, I am using a 3/4 inch thick plywood board. You want to make sure you have a board thick enough for the nails to go through and won't go out the back. With my acrylic template, I can do guide holes or use a pencil to mark each of these nail holes. I am going to do guide holes in this video. Depending on what kind of template you use, you can do these guide holes or just hammer straight through the paper if you go that route. Totally up to you. For these guide holes, I just put the nail into each hole and just hit it once just to make a little spot so I can see where on my board I need to hammer. Before you remove your template, make sure that you've marked every single hole. You don't want to miss one. Now it is time to go ahead and hammer the nails in. I do have a more in-depth hammering video, which I will link in the description below. Basically, I just hammer the nails, so half of the length is in the board. We want to leave plenty of length above the board to put yarn on. Alright, so now all the nails are in and it is time to string. Your nails do not have to be perfect. They do not have to be exactly the same height. You can see mine might lean a little bit. It's all good. So for this tutorial, I am showing how to string up one of these variegated yarn skeins. I do have a previous tutorial showing how to string up a feather with different yarn skeins. It is linked in the description below. To start, we will take the end of the yarn and just make a loop up in the air. And then we will tuck that loop on the third nail from the bottom and then pull it tight. This third nail is where the actual feather will begin. The bottom two are just for the stem. So when stringing up this feather, it is not like normal string art. We are not just going to be jumping all over. There's a certain way to do it. I like to refer as this middle nail that we tied on our home base. What we're going to do is start at the home base. We're going to go to the first nail on the right, loop around it, and come back down to our start. Then you go to the other side, loop around the first nail, and come back to start. And then we will repeat that process again, starting at that first nail that we tied onto, going to the second nail on the right, back to our start, and the second nail on the left, and then back to start. As we are stringing, we are going to make sure that all the yarn on those middle nails are being pushed all the way down to the base of the board, and then the yarn on these outer nails will stay up towards that nail head. So we're going to keep carrying on, going from that base nail over to the third on the right, third on the left, fourth on the right, fourth on the left. We are going to keep going on this bottom middle nail until it about touches the second middle nail. Right now it is just about to touch, so we are going to cross over from that bottom middle to the second middle nail. Then we are going to go back over the last left and right that we were on so that there's no gaps in our yarn. I know listening to me describe the process is probably a little bit difficult to understand, but if you really just watch what I'm doing, you'll pick it up in no time. So we're just continuing the same process as before. We're on that second middle nail and we're just going one up to the right, back to the middle, one up to the left, back to the middle. You'll keep doing this process and staying on that second middle nail until your strands of yarn almost touch that third middle nail, which you can see it is right here. So we just went right from the second middle nail to the third, and then we're repeating our last left and right layers to make sure there's no gaps, and then we'll keep going from there. So it's just constant from your middle over to the right, middle over to the left, back to the middle, over and over and over, moving up as your strands touch the middle nail above it. I find that I usually do 3 to 4 layers on these middle nails before we move up to the next one. You'll kind of just judge it on how yours is looking. There is no right or wrong answer. If you are not really liking how it is turning out, you can always pull your yarn off and readjust. So with some of these variegated yarn skeins, the stretch of certain colors will go for a long time, and so you'll have really thick chunks of the same color on your feather. As you can see, I just started pulling this strand from the skein to try and pull out the rest of this blue shade. And you have two options. What I'm doing here is I'm just going back over the blue areas at the same angle of my other layers just to get these to blend in until I get to the next shift in color. The other option is you can just cut the yarn and tie it off, pull the rest of the blue and then cut that strand and then start at your next color shift. Luckily with this one I was pretty close to the turquoise blue, so I just did a couple overlapping layers. When starting the next color, you're going to start at the top where you ended off, and then I kind of jump down a little bit but do wider layers. So say I started on that fourth middle nail, I went out following that same degree that my last layers were, and then I jumped down to the second middle nail. It just makes it wider so you can still see that blue between them. And then I did that on the other side as well. I know that probably does not make sense. This is a very hard design to try and explain, but hopefully, like I said before, watching it will help. So I did a couple of the layers where I was going over the blue, and now I am just doing how we started off, where I'm working our way up. Starting at your home base, going out to the right, back to your home base, going over to the left, back to home base, and so on and so on. As we do work our way up, I find that I might only do 2 layers per middle nail, but just play around with it so you find what you like. As you can see, my turquoise was getting a little bit longer. It's really hard to see the color shift on this camera, but I did pull out some more, and now I kind of repeated over those layers, and now I have more of a green turquoise. I did a couple of those blending layers, and now I'm back up to where I ended off and am going up some more. And I do this a lot where I will pull my yarn back off if I'm not liking the look of it. Like I told you guys earlier, just constantly playing around with this. Luckily with string art, it is very easy to pull that yarn off and redo it. It's not painting where you are having to cover up any mistakes. This, you pull it off and it's like it never happened. So we will just carry on until we get to the top of the feather. So as we get closer and closer to the top, we will be using less and less yarn because it's a lot more narrow. As you can see, I had a ton more of that teal color, so I went ahead and tied it off. I did just like how we started, where I make a loop after I cut it, tuck it onto the nail, pull it tight, and then I just trim the strand so I could use my scissors to tuck the end in. I don't double knot when I tie. Tucking this end in really helps hold the knot. So from here, I'm going to pull this strand until I get to the next shade, and I'm going to cut off all that excess before I get to the color I want. Put it to the side, and then like how we started, I'm going to do the loop, tuck it onto that top nail or wherever I ended, pull it tight, and then keep going. Alright, so we made it to the top. This is what my yarn looks like on these outer nails. It is pushed all the way to the top and there are a few layers on each nail. Now it's time to string up the center line or the stem. You can use whatever color you want. I like to just carry on from whatever my tip color is. Now, as you can see, I am just going in and out, crisscross between each of these nails, all the way down to the bottom nails, and then I will do it all the way back up, or I'm crisscrossing the opposite way, so it's little X's in between each nail. Then once I'm back up to the top, I will go down the right side of the nails, looping around every few, and then we'll go back up on the left side, making it a nice thick line. Once you're back up to that top middle nail, we will go ahead and cut the yarn, make that loop, tie it off, trim it, and tuck the end. And now we have a gorgeous ombre string art feather. And it was super easy because we used that variegated yarn skein that basically did all the color changing for us. So something fun about these variegated yarn skeins is that if you were to pull off all that yarn and start with a different color, you will have a completely different feather. I decided to use the same skein and make a second feather to see what it would turn out like. With this one, I did cut my colors and tie a new strand when I felt like it was getting too wide. So with this one, you can see that we started with the bottom teal and we ended up with a purple tip and a purple stem. So pretty. Here's some other feathers I made with variegated yarn skeins. If you guys feel like making this string art feather or any of the other string art designs that I make, feel free to check out my templates. Places to purchase are linked down in the description.